All right, put on your comic book historian hats, because today we're diving deep into the stark, incredibly gritty reality of the original 1984 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue. You know, when Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird self-published this inaugural issue out of Mirage Studios, they absolutely were not trying to launch some massive, family-friendly global franchise. Not at all. What they were actually doing was crafting this intense, black-and-white indie comic that acted as a gritty parody of 1980s superhero titles. Specifically, it heavily echoes the dark, brooding tone of Frank Miller's work on Daredevil and Ronin. So, if you go into this issue expecting the bright pop culture myth we all grew up with, well, you are in for a massive shock. Seriously, there is no pizza here. Nobody is shouting "Cowabunga!" Instead, we are immediately introduced to four monochromatic assassins executing a lethal tactical strike in the shadows. It is violent, it is dark, and it's deeply, deeply rooted in the aesthetic of 1980s urban decay. The biggest takeaway here? The original DNA of this entire franchise is a brutal, noir-inspired revenge story. Period. To really understand how this single, wildly ambitious indie issue revolutionized the comic medium, we're going to break the narrative down using a classic five-act structure. It's basically a perfectly self-contained story of vengeance. We'll track their journey right from the setup and the inciting incident all the way through the rising action, the climax, and finally the resolution.
Okay, let's jump right into Act 1, which drops us literally right into the blood and shadows. The Turtles dispatch a street gang known as the Purple Dragons with terrifying efficiency, and then they just melt away into the sewers. And what really strikes you right off the bat is that in this original black and white format, the four brothers are completely indistinguishable from one another. They don't banter, they aren't cracking jokes, they operate with ruthless, almost mechanical precision. This isn't your typical superhero street brawl, you guys, it is a tactical execution. And we have to talk about the art, because this high-contrast black and white inkwork isn't just an aesthetic choice, it is a totally deliberate narrative tool. It perfectly reflects the pure moral ambiguity of their world. There are no bright, flashy colors to signal who the good guys are. This harsh inkwork plunges the characters and us as readers into a world of literal and figurative shadows. It instantly heightens that gritty, noir tone, letting us know right from page 1 that these protagonists operate in a very, very morally gray area. That brings us right into Act 2, the inciting incident. Eastman and Laird expertly condense decades of tragedy, industrial negligence, and raw grief into a singular, laser-focused revenge plot. Splinter recounts how, decades ago, he was the pet rat of the great ninja Hamato Yoshi. After a bitter feud over a woman named Tang Shen, Yoshi was straight-up murdered by the ambitious Oroku Saki. Now, the Turtles' mutation from the ooze, that was just a fluke, an accidental byproduct of a canister falling off a truck. But what happened next wasn't an accident. For 15 long years, Splinter used his grief to mold the Turtles for one singular obsessive purpose: to kill Oroku Saki, who is now known as the Shredder.
Which leads us to a really uncomfortable reality. Splinter wasn't raising sons. Not really. Think about the definition of a child soldier. A minor forced or manipulated into taking part in armed conflict or functioning as a living weapon. That describes our protagonists perfectly. Their existence isn't treated as some beautiful miracle of nature to be celebrated. It is a targeted, lifelong military mission.
Splinter's own words actually prove this. He talks about molding them into the perfect living weapons to settle his master's debt. Because of this incredibly intense upbringing, these early turtles suffer total, complete alienation. They don't have hobbies, they don't have favorite foods. Unlike later versions of the characters who desperately just want to fit in with human society and be normal teenagers, this original comic leans heavily into their status as permanent outcasts. They are hormonal, they are violent, and they are physically and mentally separated from humanity. They have weapons, and they have a target. That is the whole shebang.
So as we accelerate into Act 3, the rising action, the stakes get cranked up tremendously. The Turtles uphold the honor of their ninja lineage by formally announcing their intent to kill Shredder. They operate as this one unified lethal machine. And notice, they don't sneak into his headquarters under the cover of night to assassinate him quietly. No, they deliver a formal challenge. Shredder, who's now running the Foot Clan in New York, accepts. The Turtles then have to infiltrate his skyscraper, fighting through absolute waves of foot soldiers, which really showcases their terrifying, unstoppable synergy.
But listen, we cannot talk about this infiltration without talking about the environment, because 1980s New York City is literally a character itself here. It's depicted as this crumbling, uncaring wasteland of urban decay. And it subtly suggests that the mutants are the literal industrial trash of the city coming back to haunt it. I mean, the ooze that created them was born of corporate industrial negligence. The city's apathetic backdrop is just perfect for creatures birthed from discarded waste, rising up from the sewers to exact a bloody vengeance.
The brilliance of this setup is how it completely deconstructs the noble ninja trope. Splinter frames this entire vendetta as a matter of restoring honor for his fallen master. But is it really? The stark reality on the page is 4 isolated teenagers raised specifically to commit premeditated murder over a decades-old grudge. The narrative totally strips away the romanticism of ninja honor and just leaves us looking at a gritty, vicious cycle of blood. That is absolutely crucial to understanding the psychological depth of this first issue.
And it all boils down to Act 4, a breathtaking, violent climax where the brothers finally face off against Shredder on the roof of a crumbling skyscraper. After battling their way all the way to the top, they are standing face to face with the man they have spent their entire lives preparing to kill. It is visceral, it is desperate, and honestly, the stakes could not possibly be higher.
This final battle is just wild, and their synergy is on full display. They quickly realize that individually, Saki totally outclasses them. He is stronger, faster, and he actually nearly kills Leonardo. But their true strength, their only real advantage, is their brotherhood. They finally overwhelm him through brutal, unified persistence. Leo manages to run Shredder right through with his katana. Beaten and bleeding out, Shredder pulls a thermite grenade for a final kamikaze move. But Donatello? He doesn't even hesitate. He knocks Shredder right off the edge of the building with his bow staff, and Shredder explodes in midair before he even hits the pavement.
Which brings us to Act 5, the resolution. And guess what? Still no pizza. There's no celebration, no high fives, just 4 monsters who have done a truly monstrous thing in the name of family honor, standing there on the edge of the roof, looking out over the sprawling city skyline. They know the debt to Amato Yoshi is finally paid in full. They just turn around and melt back into the shadows, having completely fulfilled the single purpose they were ever given.
And that leaves us with this incredible, lingering question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. What becomes of a weapon once its target is gone? Eastman and Laird created this brilliantly contained narrative that forces us to wonder what happens to these alienated child soldiers now that their lifelong mission is just over. It's a fascinating, dark origin that completely recontextualizes characters we all thought we knew so well. Thanks for joining me in the shadows of comic book history today, and hey, always keep questioning the origins of your favorite stories.